So, is this on? Can you hear it? I think it's on at the time. Again. There it is, the green light. Okay. There was a yellow light. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. It's great to see everybody back and maybe a couple of new people. And I'd like to welcome you to the TLC Transitional Life Care and our second event. I just want to say that I thank Organ Dorje Den for accommodating our program here, and Tara Mandala for providing refreshments today, which was very thoughtful, and Isis Howe for filming, and John and Jay Dean for doing our registration, and everyone who helped us set up, and especially Pat Berube for joining us as our guest speaker. So if you haven't, please make sure that you've registered, and if you haven't registered now, grab John or Jay Dean at the break, and because I'll need to have everybody's email address so I can make sure that I can contact you, and also other information. And just so you know, our next program is going to be on Sunday, July 26th instead of the 19th because of Kinsey Rinpoche's teaching in Berkeley. So many people wrote and said, why can't you change the date? Okay. So we did. And that will be with Joshua Hayes and Buffy Plant, who are oncology, hospice, and critical care nurses in the Bay Area, and they're going to talk about hospice, and they're also longtime students of Lama Tarchin Rinpoche and practitioners, so it will be a really wonderful program. Also, I want to mention that at Tashi Chuling Center in Southern Oregon, next week they're having the annual Nadrin ceremony, which is for guiding the consciousness of the deceased. And there's, in the foyer, you can find some information posted on the wall, and I also have a few handouts. If you have the names, photographs, ashes, or hair of people that have died in either recently or not recently, you can send them to Tashi Chuling, and they'll be part of this ritual, which is very profound and will be led by Lingtrul Rinpoche. So if you want to read about it, it's just over there on the other side of the wall in the foyer, the information. And if you or someone or your friends would like to assist by offering refreshments for our next program, please just let me know. I think Tara Mandala has set a really great example.
You did last time. We went, oh, we have to do as good as you did.
Oh, is that it? Well, it really makes it more familial, and it makes it more of a community when you can eat things together for some reason. It's very important. And anyone who still would like to purchase it, Instructions for the Transitional State, which is the book that we're going to be using as part of our guide during this program, is available in the bookstore here or from Vimala online. So if you want to get that, you can talk to Anne Lau, who I believe is still in the bookstore.
Right there.
Oh, there she is. I'm sorry. And before we start, I just want to say that the earthquakes in Nepal have been so devastating and have rocked a lot of people's worlds. And I want to encourage people to, if they can, help by contacting either Organ Dorje Den, Tashi Chuling, Pema Osa Ling, or any number of other local Dharma centers. You can donate money that will actually get to people who will get the money to where it needs to go. Yeah? Hi.
Hi. And I also know personally people who are on the ground doing work in Nepal, and I'm happy also to share any of that information with you.
Great.
And I apologize for coming in late.
Oh, it's okay. Have a seat. Join us. So this, our second program, is titled Living Fully, Dying Meaningfully, End of Life Decisions, and we're going to focus on a responsibility that most people avoid dealing with for as long as possible. I did. My friend who I traveled to Nepal with, John DeVilbiss, said, we're not going until you write this stuff up. I said, you're kidding me, why? He goes, think about it. It was a deeply meaningful experience for me. I spent 3 solid days and it made me think about things in a way I never had even considered, and it was very moving, and I highly recommend it. So here we have a great guide today. And as it says on today's flyer, so many people hesitate or postpone considering their end-of-life decisions, but it's a very loving thing to do. And this program offers an opportunity to express our care for those we'll assist and those we'll one day leave behind by training in practical steps toward preparing for our transitions from this life. Our guest speaker, Pat Berube, will turn our minds toward preparing advance directives, power of attorney, and POLST documents, as well as spiritual wills and the 5 wishes document, which is accepted as a durable power of attorney for healthcare in most states. To begin, I'll open our forum by reading an excerpt from the instructions for the Transitional State Manual titled Arranging the Legalities. And then Pat will take the helm and share her knowledge of this arena and offer her guidance and tell stories from her end-of-life work. And questions about the topic are welcome, and there'll be time for that. If you have questions, here's your chance to ask them. And Pat Berube, RN, MA, is a teacher and the director of Clear Light Institute in Fairfax, California, a program supporting contemplative approaches to dealing with illness, death, and dying. Pat first started meditating about 30 years ago and has studied with Asian and Western teachers, including extensive training with Lama Palden, director of Sukha City Foundation. She holds a master's degree in counseling and nearly 40 years experience as an RN. So we're in very good hands. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really thrilled you're here. So I'm just going to read this excerpt from the manual, instructions for the transitional state, and it's on page 7. Arranging the legalities. It is very important that a person approaching death communicate with family about personal wishes and medical issues. Families need to be informed, and mutual understanding in these areas is crucial and can alleviate much anxiety. A written document explaining medical, spiritual, and funeral wishes can be signed, dated, and notarized. If the dying person is married or in a partnership with someone who is unable to deal with legal or medical details, another person in the family or a close friend can be asked to act as an advocate during the process. This person or the significant other can make contacts such as with the Buddhist teacher, a hospice, and a mortuary or crematorium. A power of attorney can also be appointed who will speak for the person who is dying in order to ensure that their requests are respected. A legally binding will should be written and witnessed. An advance directive or healthcare directive form and a POLST should also be filled out. These forms document one's particular wishes for care if the point comes that they cannot be verbalized or if one becomes unable to make such decisions, including whether or not life-sustaining treatments will be implemented. Contact a hospice, hospital, or doctor about acquiring the advance directive. When filling out this form, 2 witnesses who are non-family members, a representative, and an alternative must be present to sign. Keep duplicates on file at your local hospital, with your physician, and with your family and representative. Don't simply file one away with the will. You can obtain a POLST from your doctor. It also must be understood that if 911 is called, paramedics are legally obligated to resuscitate unless a POLST form is filled out, signed, and on hand. And I want to say that often you have to even struggle to make this happen. Just because you have that on your refrigerator, it doesn't ensure that the EMTs are going to cooperate. So it can become very intense. Emergency medical technicians are trained to check whether this form is posted on the home refrigerator, and this is where it should be displayed in view at all times. Even then, family members may have to take a firm stand in regard to the dying person's wishes not to extend life in the event of an expected or unexpected crisis. A person who prefers to die at home may want to choose another avenue of assistance, since ambulances are generally heading to a hospital, and spending the end of one's life in a hospital is not the optimum choice. And that's particularly for Buddhist practitioners, or anyone who is aware of the consciousness and how it leaves the body, because you don't want to disturb the body in that process. So there's a lot to be said about this, and thanks for your patience with me. And now I'm very happy to invite Pat to lead us through today's program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we send the books.
Can we do it just after, or are we
Oh, I was gonna write notes. Are you gonna be through?
Oh. Yeah, actually, let's do it.
Sorry. Thanks so much.
Okay, well, I'm quite amazed at the numbers of people that have come out and want to hear about preparing for end-of-life issues. It's quite amazing. A couple of weeks ago at Suka City, we had our first Death Cafe. And I don't know if you've heard about Death Cafe, but we had 41 people show up for the Death Cafe. Usually it's not more than like maybe 8 or 12. So for some reason, people wanting to talk about death. So I've decided, I've been doing this class now for several years, and I've changed it a little bit tonight. And so one of the reasons that I decided to change it is that lots of times when you talk about picking an agent to speak for you when you're not able to, and the kind of decisions that you would want them to make, it's confusing, and every situation is so different that people get frustrated and they just hit a block, and then they don't do it. And so I thought that I'd change things a little bit, and we'll see how that goes, and I'll get your feedback and see if that makes it any easier for you. And one of the ways that I'm going to do it is by telling several stories. And when you look at this thing, just if you don't have any medical background at all, and you look at the options and stuff, it just seems completely confusing and undaunting. But I've been a nurse for almost 48 years, and so I've seen a lot of the scenarios that I'll be talking about. The first one is that many years ago, and I think it was in the early 90s, I took care of this young man who was dying of AIDS. And this is a time when we didn't have the drugs that we now have, so that people are able to live a very long and productive life taking medicine, but at the time they didn't have that medicine. So young men were coming in and they were just dying. It was really very sad. So in this particular situation, this young man, they'd already had an episode of pneumocystis before, pneumonia. He was in the intensive care unit, and he knew he wasn't going to get out of it this time. And he decided he did not want to go on a ventilator, and instead he spent the next day and a half or so getting all of his affairs in order as quickly as possible. And he did it in the most loving way. It was really amazing. And he had his whole family around him. He gave away his possessions. He had an attorney come. He thought of everything he could possibly think of with the help of family. They were very supportive of him. And then when it came time for him to die, he died in the most beautiful, loving way, because he gave away all of his possessions, and the only thing that was left was the love that he had for everyone. It was very palpable, and it was very amazing. And actually I hear that it's kind of like that in Tibet too, is that people just give away all of their possessions. And what's left if you don't have the attachments to all of the items that we cherish so much, there is just that connection with each other and that love. So it was one of the most beautiful deaths that I have seen. Lots of times people don't get to that point, which is unfortunate. And so the other stories that I wanted to tell about is really much more current. And I don't know if people are familiar with Dr. Atul Gawande and the work that he's doing, and also Dr. B.J. Miller, who's the executive director of Zen Hospice. And they really are at the forefront of wanting people to have a different kind of dying process that is not something that has been prolific, and I don't think is very common right now, even then, because it really does require physicians to be very much in partnership with the person who's dying and with the family. It requires the patient to be able to do that, and it requires the family to be able to do that. Typically, a physician will go into a patient that has cancer, metastatic cancer, for example, and they will do their doctor thing, and they will give them the options, the percentages of this and that, and it can be really quite confusing, and you're making these major decisions. And they always sort of give a certain sense of hope. And when hope is not what's happening, dying is happening. And one of the teachers that I've really enjoyed, Zojan Punlap, said that, when dying is happening, you don't try to live, it's dying. And so they're giving out hope. And in the process of doing that, families are grasping to trials and to the percentages. This could happen, that could happen, and next thing you know, they're going down that road of another round of chemotherapy or another surgical intervention. And in this, if you look in the people who purchased the 5 wishes, I inserted a couple of pages in here, and the first one I will get to. But the second one is the suggested reading on death and dying and grief. And so I put down some of the information that I think would be helpful. In Julie's book, she has a lot of really good references, and these are a little bit, different. They're actually, I think of them as spiritual, because they're spiritual in terms of working with the reality of what's really happening. Being Mortal is one of his books. He's written about 4 books. The other 3 books are really a little more towards the medical. And then these other articles, and you can go, and I put in parentheses exactly where you can get to read these. And in this particular one, the first one says, letting go, what should medicine do when it can't save your life, is an example of a young woman that he took care of. And she was very clearly not going to live. She had metastatic cancer, and this doctor did his thing, with his percentages, and we could do this and we could do that, and the family, the parents and the husband and the other relatives were all around, and they were all helping her to make a decision and grasping at the hope and keeping her, and they were so attached to her. And the whole focus was about what he could do for them, not what her priorities were for how she wanted to live, for her last days, and how she wanted to even die. And so what ended up happening, we see this happen so much, and I've seen it happen, is that she went through all these additional chemo, and it didn't do anything but just make her miserable and so much suffering. She went through some additional kind of procedures, some other surgical procedures, and basically for the rest of her life, she was miserable, suffering, and she died a very unpleasant death. And he looked at that, and he was just not happy with these. Very interesting, if you look in the YouTube, I also put some YouTube thing in there. It's very interesting to listen to these 2 young men, Atul Gawande and B.J. Miller, they're very personable and very interesting people. So, that was not a very acceptable situation for him. And so in the second one, he talks about the conversation that matters most. And in this situation was a woman who was, I think she was in her early 70s, and she was a piano teacher for one of his daughters. And she had terminal cancer, and instead of giving her all the options kind of stuff, and the percentages of how she was going to, extend her life, and how we were going to treat this illness, he ended up asking her questions. And let me get to my questions here. Okay, so he says, what are your biggest fears and concerns? So it's all very in terms of what her goals are and what she wants. What goals were most important to her? And what trade-offs was she willing to make? So trying to tease out, what did she really want for, and how, and what was really important for her was she didn't want to be in pain, which you can relate to. She had a lot of nausea and vomiting. She didn't want to do that. She wanted to be able to eat, if she could. She had a wedding she wanted to go to in a couple of days, and she wanted to be able to do that, which actually didn't work out, unfortunately. And then she wanted to be able to get up and move around and do things, visit with people and stuff. So he took all of what she wanted and formulated a plan with her. And this is the kind of thing that takes time, and doctors never want to take anymore, not all of them. But time, spending that kind of time with somebody is really is a lot. And so he took the time with her. They came up with a plan, and they ended up doing some surgical procedure that he wasn't able to accomplish what it is that they had hoped. But he was able to put some tubes in her abdomen and her stomach and give her enough relief so she didn't have the nausea, she didn't have the vomiting, and actually, since she didn't have the pressure of the fluid building up in her abdomen, she didn't have the pain. So she was doing fine with just Tylenol. And so she was very happy about this. She went home with hospice. She had these tubes, of course, and she wore a robe so it wouldn't show, and was able to visit with family and friends. And she decided to start teaching piano again. And she did that for about another month. And it was very sweet, very loving to all of these kids, and didn't have any children of her own, so they were like her children in a sense. She really gave them a lot of encouragement and a lot of affection. And then she died in a very peaceful way. And it felt like that was a successful way of ending one's life. And her priorities and what was important to her got met. And she was able to die in a way that was meaningful for her. She had, as they say in hospice, the best possible day. And not just one, she had many best possible days. As opposed to the first example, where the poor woman was miserable for the whole time. And so, the last one, of course, is the best possible day. And these are not very long articles, but they're really very interesting. And the best possible day is sort of a motto of hospice, to be able to give people that, and to arrange their care and their medications so that that is supported to the best of their ability, and to find out what is really important for people. There's another little bit of a side apparently they did a study, and I don't think it was a very big study, in Los Angeles about hospice. And you may very well know that in hospice, they need to have a physician saying that their condition means that this person won't live for more than 6 months. And it also means that if you go into hospice, that you that you can't, pursue any aggressive chemo or any aggressive therapy. So, in this particular, the problem is that a lot of people don't end up going to hospice because they don't want to let go of that hope, which of course, they have the right to feel that way. And so what they did in this particular program is they say, okay, you can go into hospice and we have all these services that are available to you. They can help you to have those best days. But in this particular program, if you choose to, you can have chemotherapy. If you choose to do something a little bit more, more than palliative, something with the potential to improve your condition, you can do that. And what happened is that people were ready, they said, fine, that's great. That's the reason why they weren't signing up for hospice, because they didn't want to let go of that hope and that possibility that could be a trial or there could be something that would, make a difference for them and extend their life in a quality way. So they signed up for hospice, and the interesting thing to them is that they actually never did pursue the chemo. So it was just the idea that they had that choice. So that was what was really important. So I'm hoping that in the future we will see it a little more relaxed and will be a little bit more, letting go of some of these restrictions that really keeps people from being able to benefit from hospice. They can offer so much for the palliative, relieving symptoms and supporting a quality life right through to the end. So we can hope for that. So Dr. Gawande says that there are two most fundamental lessons here that he has found. And we don't recognize that people have priorities that they need us to help them with, rather than just living longer. And so really paying attention to people's priorities. And of course, the best way to find that out is to ask them. And it does take time, and of course, they're not compensated for that, in terms of having those conversations. And so there's a few important questions also that he is suggesting that docs need to consider. We can also reflect on these for ourselves as we think about what's important to us in making these end-of-life plans. So reflecting on these can help us to also answer these 5 wishes. What is our understanding of our health and our condition? And we may be healthy right now, but just to keep that in mind in terms of what your understanding is of your health and condition in the future. What are your goals if your health worsens? So if you're healthy, your health starts to worsen, what would be important to you? And what are your fears around that? And what are the trade-offs that you're willing to make and not willing to make? I have a friend, one of our Sangha members, who's dying, and I went to the doctor with him just because it's good to have somebody else there to advocate and to hear things that maybe he doesn't always hear. And he was very clear with the doctor, he wants quality, not quantity. So he wants to be able to do what he wants to do, and if he can't do that, then he doesn't want to have palliative measures. And the doctor was very good about that, and he says these are the palliative treatments that we can do for you to help you with this and that. And so it seems like he is in the right situation to be able to help him with that. Now the other thing to consider is that these questions will change over time. So it's not like you have one little intervention and one chance to talk with people, but down the road things start to change, and what you'd hoped that palliative measures were going to help doesn't help anymore, or there needs to be some other discussion about it. So this is sort of an ongoing process. It's not like a one time you've said it and now you gotta live with the results. Now, one of the other things is that Mike, I wanted to mention is that one of the things that makes it difficult for people to even think about this is our culture that just doesn't want to talk about death. We don't want to talk about dying, and to the point where sometimes you might even know someone who is dying, and maybe you don't talk to them, maybe you don't call them. And this friend of mine says that, he says all of a sudden there are people that are just not there anymore for them. They're just not, they may just give a quick, they're uncomfortable with it. They don't know what to say. They don't, there's a coming from their own personal fears. So the Death Cafe is really helpful for that, because it helps to bring out some of those issues and those concerns, which is contemplating death and impermanence is very much part of our Buddhist path. It isn't for most people, but it's amazing how many people actually are coming. And just a few days after we had our Death Cafe, there was a program, a full-day program in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and it had over 400 people in there talking about, it was a day of talking about dying, and 2 hours of it was spent in a Death Cafe. 400 people signed up for it. It was the largest Death Cafe that it ever had in the entire world. It's a big international movement that's going on, and started in Europe, and it's in most of the countries in Europe, and Australia, the United States, some parts of Asia. So it's pretty interesting. Go to the deathcafe.com website and read some things about it. It's very interesting. So, and the other thing that we often see is that families really need to be pulled into this conversation. You may have some very clear ideas about what you want to have happen, and your family's not there. You have family members that want to control the whole thing. They don't agree with you. So in terms of picking an agent to speak for you when you cannot, it's really important to pick somebody who is going to understand what your wishes are, who's going to go along with it. And it's pretty critical. You've got to find someone who can handle the stress of it and handle the challenges of it. And sometimes it's not always easy. I was in the ER one time, and they brought this elderly woman in who was in a tremendous amount of pain. And it wasn't pain from cancer or terminal illness, but she just had a lot of back surgeries and back pain, and she just did not want to have a lot of things done. And her daughter was just in tears. She was just, I know what my mother wants, but I don't want it. And I just gave her a lot of support. The fact that she was willing to do what her mother wanted, even though it wasn't what she really wanted. She didn't want to let go of her mother. But she was willing to stand by her decisions. And that actually is perfect. That's the kind of agent that you really want. Is somebody who will really speak for you and has had that conversation. But speaking with the agent is one thing, and talking with them, but you got to talk with all the other family members that are going to come out of the woodwork. Say, I don't agree with this, and they do. And they do. So, and one other little example of family problems that has resulted in Whitney Houston's daughter is a perfect example. One side of the family thinks that a miracle is going to happen, and the other side of the family is saying that she's in a permanently vegetative state. She's not going to be coming off that ventilator. that's actually pretty common to see that. So, filling out the durable power of attorney is not the end of it. It's not just between you and your conscience, your partner, your spouse, your agent. It's looking at who else is going to be involved in this, or needs to be involved, and needs to have the conversation. You need to have a conversation with them. Okay, so, let's see then. There are some things here. I did want to show you, if you go to the hospital and you don't have, they have to ask you if you have a durable power of attorney for healthcare. And then they note that and they will ask for you a copy of it. Or, ask you to bring it.
And that's also referred to as an advance directive, right?
Correct, that's correct. And so, very often they will give you this. And this is from the California Medical Association, and people are welcome to look it over and see whether actually, and it's kind of, it's very basic, and it's kind of an either or, and it, for me, I just sort of said, well, I don't know. Because it doesn't really give you enough to kind of chew on in terms of what your choices are. And to talk a little bit about the choices is that you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know how it's gonna all shake out. Now, I guess if you knew how it was gonna shake out, you'd make the right decision, but you don't really know. And even if you have a terminal illness, you don't know how that's even gonna work out. You may think you're gonna know, but maybe a couple of weeks before you die, something else happens. And so the situation is shifting and changing. So one of the advantages that I feel is the 5 Wishes has, and it's not a perfect document, is that it gives you a chance to express your philosophy, gives you a chance to express it with a lot more than yes or no, a lot more words and a lot more explanation. And we'll go through it in a few minutes unless we wanted to take a break. But I just wanted to also talk about the PULST, as Julie had mentioned a little bit earlier. And the PULST, what it stands for is a physician orders for life-sustaining treatment, and I have a copy of it here. And I also attached a copy. I retired from Marin General about 5 months ago. But before I did, I made a copy of their policy and procedure. So I thought that that would be kind of helpful when I look at that. So the physician's order, so you're not going to get a physician to sign an order to limit care if you don't have a medical condition that supports that. And so if you have an illness that they would agree to filling out a PULST, it would limit your having CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or if you should go for comfort care or sort of selective care. This actually defines it a little bit, breaks it down a little bit more, rather than the usual do not resuscitate or resuscitate. Do CPR or no CPR. Well, there's some other levels of care here that is really helpful. So if you have a terminal illness, the PULST is the way to go, because it's really it's a lot more clear and a lot more specific.
Is that used in all hospitals or all,
Yeah.
in all
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you get?
From the physician would fill it out.
They're supposed to fill it out with you.
Correct.
And sign it.
Correct. It's the result. It's not something that they decide by themselves. It's a result of their conversation with you. And actually, they are required by law to be able to fill out their explanation of it in their notes. So a physician isn't going to say, that one, don't resuscitate. You can't do that. It has to be supported with documentation of the condition.
You know, I
Yes.
might just mention, since people are asking, our Tara Mandala group had a lot of guidance from you last year when we
Yeah.
did our resource guide.
Right.
And the pulse is in there, the advanced healthcare directive, and some checklists. So if there's anybody who doesn't wanna be searching around on the internet or trying to find those
Mhm.
forms, they are in here.
Right.
And we sell them just for the cost of printing, which is
$5.
$5.
Right.
They're here. Yeah,
Okay, great.
the break, if you don't
It's
wanna.
good to have all those
You
resources.
can find it all on the internet, we just did it for you.
Right.
A lot of Pat's things are in there, a lot of her wonderful, wonderful
Yeah.
guidance is in there.
It's an excellent resource, your book, it's great.
Now, another one that I had put down on suggested reading on death, dying, and grief was this Death Redesigned, which is very interesting, and that's really this particular company and marketing company in San Francisco called IDEO. And they're helping to redesign death with Zen Hospice. And they had a California Sunday magazine that is all on their redesigning death. And I put that down here because although I have the hard copy of it, it's actually online. There's a very interesting article with BJ Miller here as well.
Excuse me, Pat, I had my own 5 wishes, but I don't have those two. Do you have any extra
Oh,
of
sure.
those?
Oh, sure. I'll see what you get that.
Thank you.
Okay, so in your handout, I had also put down not only the biography, but as something that it is in the Tara Mandala program, because I gave them a copy of this as well too. But I did this many years ago when I was trying to figure out flowcharts on the internet. So this is practical and spiritual scenarios, because as Buddhists, we talk about wanting to do a vigil with the body for like as much as 3 days. And the 3 days is not like hard and fast rule. It can take up to 3 days, but you know, a lama or somebody who's skilled in it can make that determination that they actually have left. And you know, lots of times it can be a lot earlier than 3 days. So just briefly to go over it, there's the anticipated death at home. So if you're going to do the vigil, it has a different, you know, different things that you're going to do. It's easier if you die at home in terms of being able to do a vigil. And then it's easier to do the care of the body at the home and to prepare, and then when you're ready, call the mortuary, and of course you would be calling the lama in order to help you with prayers, to do koa if you arrange for that. And then the anticipated death in a hospital, a little bit more challenging because you have to work with the hospital. But that's not, you know, there's an easy way, as I've told patients and families, I says, well, there's an easy way and a hard way to do this. And the hard way is you want to do the whole thing yourself, which means that you have to get the death certificate ahead of time, you have to go down to the county and get all the permits and the papers. It's better to go through a mortuary and have them do it all. And so when you're, work it out with the hospital to be able to do a vigil, even if it's for a few hours, can really, you know, be very helpful. And I've heard from Rinpoches that most people within a few hours have left their body. So, you know, you can read this, and it does tend to make it a lot easier to actually figure out what the steps are, because it can seem like, oh, you know, there's a lot here with the dry ice. And we had actually, at one point in our group, we went to different mortuaries in order to talk with them about, you know, about the practices that we do and see what role that they could play. And actually, we were surprised at how many were actually very supportive. I think they know they have to kind of work so many years, mortuaries would, they basically, ran the show. And so more and more people are wanting to play a role in helping the dying and have and hold a vigil. Even if they're not Buddhists, I've heard people who will do that. They just want to bring their mother home, and then just be with her for a little while, because they know the hospital can't do it, and the mortuary will actually take them to their home, and then the mortuary will pick them up so many hours later or even the next day. And there are many of them that will actually be supportive of and helpful if you need them to come in order to, help to reduce any leakage or make any suggestions for what you could do. And then the sudden, unexpected, unanticipated death is a lot more challenging, because if it's an unanticipated death, like a car accident, is that then it becomes legally the coroner has complete access to the body, and you really don't have any control over that. You can express your wishes and your desires, but if the coroner gets involved because his concerns about what the cause of death is, or if there's some kind of potential criminal, act that happened, that they would have a right to the body over you, and you have to work for that. And then if they needed to do an autopsy, and you can talk to them about having a limited autopsy or not doing it, maybe waiting a little bit. But again, it was helpful for me to hear that most people do leave within a matter of very few hours. And another thing to mention is, and I don't know about in your tradition, but I know I have statements from Khenpo Sochen Jamso, who is one of the teachers of the Karmapa, and also Trungpa Rinpoche, and that said that if you wanted to donate organs, that you can, but you make that decision when you're alive. And you make it out of your own desire to be of help to other people. And they make it very clear that it's also not appropriate for people to make that decision for you after you've died. And I do know from my experiences that the California Transplant Network is they can be rather insistent. And the person who has the durable power of attorney for healthcare can actually make that decision. So that's another part of your conversation with people who might pick, or you might want to pick for that. Yes.
I just wanted to mention, that's a bit controversial, because actually I talked with Chogdud Rinpoche, I don't know. Chogdud Rinpoche?
Yes, he passed away a number of years ago.
Yeah, he advised not to do that unless you're a very advanced practitioner.
Right.
Because what happens, of course, is that the body is disturbed, and if the consciousness hasn't left, that's a problem.
Right.
And if there's a lama there that can determine whether the consciousness is left, that's different.
Right.
It really depends on what happens when you die and if you have a lama present. And even in this manual that I put together, it says 3 days. That's in the event that you don't know.
Yeah.
So if 3 days goes by, you're fairly certain that person has left, that consciousness has left. But it's very true that it can leave much earlier, and if a lama does POA for a person, it could happen really soon.
Really quickly.
Immediately, in
Correct.
fact. So I just wanted to mention that. It just depends on who your teacher is and what your advice is.
Well, I don't think that there's a conflict with that, because I think the implication of being able to make that kind of a decision also would mean that you were an advanced practitioner to have that much of a desire for having your body being of benefit to others. So I don't see a conflict in that.
I think Trungpa Rinpoche said that basically it can freak you out if your organs start to get harvested and you didn't already have that intention behind it. So, you talk about disturb the body, you're seeing your own body being chopped up.
Right. Yeah. I don't think it's true. I
Only
agree.
two practitioners.
Very practicing.
Yeah, I mean, it should be, somebody should not be making that decision for you. I totally agree. Okay, did we wanna take a break and then go over the 5 wishes after that?
Sure, we'll bring out the refreshments. 15 minutes?
And we're supposed to clear out here.
In my case, yes.
Yeah.
It is, it's the same price,
Now I'm kind of like, wait a minute.
I'm thinking of refreshments. Oh, there.
I'm doing fine. I don't know if you're here and it seems, But if we look at the Catholic
Are you just standing here and everybody's coming and helping themselves?
Well, yeah, you can help, you can do that. I think they're bringing another table, I think. No, they're at it, they're bringing another table. At least the two people in off.
I don't know what that cafe is.
I have signage with mine. There's no more room on that table. I just read it. And they really did go off to find a table.
So that is really helpful.
Here we go, look at that, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, like a DNR.
You wanna set it up back there?
I do.
And then then there'd be an option for people, it wouldn't have to be in line.
Cause it's like, I don't know what's gonna happen, I don't know what I'm gonna do about it. I know, the last thing you might decide, I did want to make myself very well. There's this one story is on a woman, very father.
Yeah, I'm gonna put
Yeah. And is he here? Yeah. Very influential. You might say, no, I'm in New Jersey. Going into surgery for it, and she had a self-report. And she was driving back to the bridge and realized, oh, this is what they talked about when she got this responsibility. She turned around and went back, oh, how did she finish? Well, they didn't talk about the music, right? Right. So, going into the surgery, and what would be the I want to be able to. And now, the surgeon came out and said, look, it's not going to go well, you have severe disability, what do you want to do? Well, eggs and chocolate ice cream. Yeah, so gave her
I met you last time, I don't remember your name.
Yeah.
Huh? What's your name?
Julie.
Julie. Jennifer.
Yeah, you couldn't make it back this time, huh?
Yeah, it was really important to me
Mm-hmm.
to come, so I'm happy to be here.
Oh, my birthday, I heard talking about Evelyn. Yeah, I didn't know You were so helpful. I don't know if I ever said that out.
Well, that's so sweet of you, that's so sweet.
So much.
I know, I noticed that.
Probably. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's perfectly fine, that's perfectly fine. No, I'm hoping to like share.
Yeah.
One of these three ladies, I just don't understand. Right. And I actually haven't done that. I'm thinking about doing something like that.
Did you ever see the copy? What do you learn?
Yes, you did, I did. Yes, very sweet of you. And I also got one of Julie's.
What a nice job.
So I joined the
We ended up on the other side.
How are you doing? Good to see you again. How are you too? It's just I have a hard time. My mom is in hospice. I mean, but it's all like happening. My friend just died of untreated breast cancer. And she wouldn't accept the C word or the D word. You know, so it's It's not just
Everything
the
surfs up
doctor.
for you.
Yeah, and it's not just the doctor who's implying hope. Sometimes it's the person.
Oh, yeah,
And
people
that's
are,
their
it's called
wishes.
denial. I'm so sorry.
But, you know, it's just, I'm in it right now.
That's so sad.
And it's really good to be here.
I'm so glad it's here. We're here.
It was
That's
so
great.
important for me to be here.
Yeah, it's excellent. Have support.
Yeah.
We need that. That's what we need to be for each other. Yeah. Oh,
So I
you can always.
appreciate.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll email you or call you then.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
No problem. Sorry, I have to go give my
No,
husband
no,
a
you
snack.
go. Yeah, it's great. I saw your wedding pictures online.
You did.
Oh, I didn't. You could see it was us. It's so cute.
So you're still.
I know it's Are you?
See, now everybody's got their stuff. Yeah, they're busy.
So how is this to go, classes I went to where it was like, had great speakers. Right. I'm really sorry about college. Carla was one of Now that you're retired, you just run all over. While I still can. Right. So, I'm about ready to have fewer talks and more action. That's why it really did appeal to me to go out and meditate and we did it, and I'm kind of getting strict. And a few people asked us what we were doing.
I think if we inadvertently were right beside this huge exercise group of about 100 people with meters who were cheering them on, who were doing all this. So. 10 more, 10 more. No, stop, no. 9, 8, 7, 6. Want to quit, don't quit. Anyway, it wasn't that it was distracting, I didn't find it distracting. It kind of took the notice off of us. We had to do a sign. If it was removed and not having them going on, I think more people would stop. Who are you? Okay, that's
And we also got a sign that says,
oh, yeah. Yes, that's right. You know, Tate just broke his arm. In 2 places. He said he got a cast up to here. So I think it was all John could do to get it organized. Right before the practice for the Pachanga Thursday night. John came to the hospital with Tate's ambulance, and Anna Rachel led the Pachanga practice. I wrote her and I said, there's a special place in the Bardo for the mothers and babies. It's like you've already been through the Bardo, so you get so today it was nice. We could organize a little better.
I'd like to do more of that.
Can everyone please take their seats again, and we'll get started here in just a couple of minutes.
I need to buy a whole book.
Money for what? 5 wishes? Did you get one? Did you get one? Oh, you go. That's okay. There's a lot of traffic out there, wasn't there? Oh, that's a long trip. Okay. Okay. So I thought we would go through the 5 wishes and have an opportunity to talk about it a little bit. I have to tell you that the first time when I saw the 5 wishes, I was thinking, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, it was some good things about it, and then when I read Ato Goande's articles, it shifted my perspective, and I started to see it very differently. I started to see it as, what are your priorities, what are your choices, what do you want to have happen? And it really shifted the whole perspective for me, and had a little more of appreciation for it. As I'd mentioned before, the 5 Wishes is not, it's not a perfect document. And, you know, we can go through, and I'm sure there'll be questions. So the first wish is on page 4. And this is where you're picking your healthcare agent. The person I want to make healthcare decisions for me when I can't make them for myself. Now the big key there is when you can't make them for yourself. So someone is not making decisions for you if you can make your own decisions. And health professionals are going to be talking to you to make sure that if you're cognizant of what's happening and asking of you what you want, they're going to be going with that. And my own experience of my father when he was in a nursing home was that they had asked us, his daughters, you know, what he wanted, and we told him that, told the nurses that he did not want to have a lot done, and he didn't want to go back to the hospital. Well, they took that into consideration, but then they went and they talked to him. And he says, if anything is to happen, I want you to turn right around and leave me alone. He was a little project.
Is this when the person that you've appointed, do they, are they required to have the power of attorney in order to make these decisions? Because the physicians and nurses and the legal aspect of the hospital will ask whoever you have designated, do you have the power of attorney over this person? So are they the same or different?
Now, there's a power of attorney for financial. It's not the same as power of attorney for healthcare. And this document actually is the document where you're stating it, and in the back that there is a place to notarize. And this is the document, the legal document that they will accept, that the person that you pick is the durable power of attorney for healthcare and can make decisions.
I will say though, in most hospitals, they want you to fill out their form.
Right.
Don't they?
Kaiser does.
I have Kaiser.
Okay, well, maybe Kaiser, and I don't, what does Kaiser do?
They have
Just like they have their own form.
You can take any form to them, but they will convert it for you into their form in the computer. I just
Yeah.
discovered that.
I'm wondering what's different about their form.
I don't know. Their form is a little more vague than this. What I'm planning to do is, use this and then take the detail from this and write it in their form. Cause there's space to write in things in their form.
And you can attach pages.
And you can
That's
attach
what I did, I attached.
Cause this actually, in my opinion, is a little better than their form.
Yeah, and it's probably, their form may be very similar to
Yeah,
this.
similar to that one.
This is the California Medical Association
Yeah.
form. And you're welcome to look at this, and it's very, very specific. And it doesn't give a lot of choice in here for expressing your wishes.
But I was wondering, is the person who's appointed, if we ourselves are unable to give directives or anything, or fill forms out itself, we have
Right.
designated a person. So the person who's representing me, the agent, do they have, and you answered it, at the back of this is actually been signed by me to the person who's my agent, and that they have legal rights
They
to make
do.
decisions over what I have, so when they fill out that form, this is approved to that, to the hospital, for the legal
Fill out what,
aspect.
you're talking about this form.
Whichever form that the hospital requires for my agent to speak on my behalf, should I become unable to express my wishes.
You know, my thinking about Kaiser is that it may be that where their computer system is, and these computer systems is like, this is it, you have to do it according to the computer. And
That's
maybe-
what they told me recently.
Otherwise, they'd have all these pieces of paper and it wouldn't be digital, it wouldn't be a part of your digital record. That'd be my guess. And they wanna know who the durable power of attorney is. And
They
then,
probably have the capacity to scan
They do.
other
Right.
documents in
I
and
wouldn't be
attach them
surprised.
to the file.
Right.
Or they have a comment section
uh-huh,
in the program. We use a similar program that they use. They use a little bit.
Is it Epic?
It's Epic.
yeah,
It's
Epic.
called Apex.
Apex. Okay. Well, it's basically, it comes down to the same thing, just that what this does is that it gives you a lot more to think about. And as I mentioned in those stories, when you listen to real life stories and see the difference between having your priorities really considered and pulled into the treatment plan, it's very different than if you don't have that experience. And that happens all the time, and it's happening now. It's not like now, from now on, everything is gonna be better. As one of the Sangha members that we have, her brother just died last month. And it was very sudden. He was a very healthy looking man, and then he died of leukemia very quickly. He was 65 years old, but when he was having a real difficult time breathing, the doctor was saying, oh, well, you know, he can get better, and you know, he was just talking like this, and because they're just human beings, and they not all of them can handle the reality that the patient's dying. And so the wife was a little bit more savvy. She says, he's what? He's not gonna get better. She says, show me his x-ray. Looked at his x-ray, and she says, look at this x-ray. I don't know how she knew how to read an x-ray, but she says, look at this x-ray. He can't breathe, and he's not getting better. He's dying. So the wife basically had to kind of push this doctor into accepting. And unfortunately, this is the kind of doctor that now is not really, in this particular understanding about considering people's priorities and how he should really gear his care towards someone who is dying so that they can be comfortable and that the family can feel supported and the patient feels supported. And that's what B.J. Miller's whole thing is that the whole model of care in the Zen hospice is around helping people to have the kind of death that they want. That's meaningful for them. And so he just did a TED talk in March. And he's into this whole program of trying to get the insurance companies to recognize that people don't need to be spending their last days in a hospital. They can go to a model like Zen hospice and get the support that they need, as well as the physical care that might be too much for a family, to help them to get the kind of death that they want. So when you look at wishes number 1, it's you're making choices. This agent is making choices about your medical care, and so they're meeting with the physician, and so it's helpful to know that there is this trend, or at least the beginning of a trend, of physicians needing to ask questions in order to incorporate the reality of what's really happening with what they can do in a palliative method to help someone, and consider the priorities of the family, and at least what they think their wishes are. Because if you get chosen to be an agent, you may not be completely clear about what they want. And so what's helpful, if you're an agent, is if they have 5 wishes document, you read it over, and you see that they have written letters to their family and their philosophy, and you start understanding something about them that maybe you didn't know before. It helps you to support you to feel that you can make a decision that you think is what they would want.
I have a fast question.
Sure.
If you were married, is your spouse automatically the one who becomes your healthcare agent unless you state otherwise?
If you have not made that decision, then there is a legal, sequence of who actually has the rights, and your spouse would be another one. And if you didn't have a spouse, then it would be either a parent or a sibling. I'm not exactly sure how it goes from there, whether maybe it passes the siblings and it goes to your firstborn.
It's
There's a whole
really
sequence
important
of
to
it.
decide.
It's important to decide, because if you have a spouse who, you love them to bits, but, they wouldn't know what to do. They may not meet your needs quite the way you'd like them to, then you can pick somebody else and talk to them about that. That they can be supported in other ways. And the stress of that and the difficulties of that, they can be involved in, but they don't feel like it has to be totally on their shoulders. There's ways of doing it, it's very late. And so these are some of what you're actually giving them the authority to do, to make choices for you by talking with the physicians and deciding on treatment, interpreting instructions, and consent to be admitted to an assisted living facility, a hospital, hospice, or nursing home. You can hire any kind of a healthcare worker that's needed to care. And you can even make decisions to request, take away, or not give medical treatment, including artificially providing food and water, looking at medical records, and even move you to another state to get the care you need. We live in California, we have wonderful hospitals, so that sounds a little surprising, but I have a cousin who basically moved from Alaska to Austin, Texas, because he didn't feel like he was getting the care he needed, so, people do that.
Pat,
Yes,
I think it's important for folks to know too, that any of these items can be lined out,
absolutely,
initialed, and it doesn't give the authority to your
exactly.
person to do that, particular activities such as donate usable organs. If
Right.
you don't want it, you just line it out.
You just line it out, exactly, and it says that right up on top. It says, please cross out anything you don't want your agent to do that is listed below.
And you need to date it and put your initials, not just line it out.
And you can add things to it if you so choose. What's nice about this is that it's open-ended enough so that you can add things to it and subtract things. So it's really important to pick the right person who can speak for you. It's really important. And it's somebody who basically is going to have to stand up to other family members that might think very differently and have a different agenda, which is really asking a lot for some families. Any questions? Okay. And wish number 2 on page 6. My wish for the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. And so this is a little bit more specific. And when you pick a healthcare agent, this is when you're in a coma. And you're not able to understand your health condition, you're not able to make decisions. You're needing to be on a respirator. These are just really life-threatening events that happen. And so, this is what you should keep in mind as my caregiver. And again, this is I don't want to be in pain, and you want to have enough medicine for that. I don't want anything done or omitted by my doctors or nurses with the intention of taking my life. I want to be offered food and fluids by mouth and kept clean and warm. You can alter these and change these in any way that you would choose. And then to look at what life support treatment actually means, which is really an important point right here. Those of us in the medical field understand what that means, but a lot of people don't know what that means. I know that before, several days before my mother died, and she had to sign this form saying in hospice that she did not want to be resuscitated. And she looked at me and she says, "Oh, what do I do? What do I do?" And so I just explained to her what would happen if they had to do CPR. And if she stopped breathing, they would press on her chest. And, you know, they would do all these different things that she could, and I said, "And you'd be miserable." And she says, "I don't want that, I don't want that." So putting it in simple terms can really be very helpful for people to know what it means to actually go through life support treatment. Life support treatment sounds like something that everybody would want. But it may not be something you really want when you're having the experience of it. Yes, I.
Yes, I just want, add something. There is Rinpoche, Jasper Rinpoche from Nepal just a couple of days ago gave me teaching in Bardu. He mentioned when somebody asked him if it's appropriate to give, to put the dog to sleep, and he said it's probably not recommended because it's better to let the dog naturally exhaust his karma. Otherwise, it would bring back that he would have to experience it anyway in that time. So that made me think this way in our life, at the end of our life, if we are undergoing, pain, should we ask her to, what you call the medicine to reduce our pain, or to put our in sleep, or we should, so we would have to make that decision to bring it to the next life to experience it, to save that for next life.
So
Yeah.
you're saying that he was suggesting to
Not
not
to-
be
not
get
to-
relief
not-
from pain?
No,
he's talking
he was
about,
not.
he's talking about euthanizing the animal. And that's what
Oh,
Rinpoche Kepha was saying.
Oh, for animals, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I didn't
Right,
get
right.
all the
And
words.
so
She was relating it back to humans.
Relating that to our human being, the same, the concept.
that is totally different because it's like that woman who chose to end her life prematurely. And in the dharmic sense, as Lilia was saying,
Yeah.
Kempo was saying, it's best not to choose that path.
Yes, it is, yes.
Sort of thing, that's what she was referring to, but she was referring to her dog. One of the dog was euthanized and the other one wasn't, and so
Right.
the question was to Kempo, is it good to euthanize our dog or not, our pets?
Yeah.
So that was the question.
Right, the same concept apply to our human being, because we are same undergoing severe pain, severe suffering. Would we want to put the kind of drug to ourselves to relieve the pain, to put it to sleep, or to give us, let me just die, peacefully, or
I have a
just
comment about
yeah.
that, actually, because I received teachings from Tuku Sanak Rinpoche about this. And he was saying that receiving palliative care and pain comfort measures is really good
Okay, good.
before you die,
It is.
because if your mind is calm, your death will be
That's
calm.
great.
If you're dying in deep pain, you can't focus your mind, you
Exactly.
can't practice if there's any ability left for that.
That's my
And your
contribution.
death will be much more difficult, and the good part is that once you die, the effects of those drugs no longer are there at all. It
Thank
does
you.
not affect after you go into the bardos.
Thank you.
Right.
But I do have a question about that, because I've read like in Andrew Holochek's book that it's important to not have so much pain medication that you're blacked out, because you want some awareness to be able to work with your mind. So in this kind of a document, I mean, how would you possibly convey that kind of subtlety to a nurse who's giving you that medicine? Because basically they just knock you out a lot. I don't wanna be
A
knocked out,
palliative
but I
care-
also don't wanna be in pain.
A palliative care physician would be able to handle that,
Uh-huh.
because they'd have a lot more tools to be able to work with it, whether it's a nerve block. I have, the friend of mine who is dying, he takes a lot of Oxycontin, and he also takes a Ritalin to counteract some of the sedative effects of it. So he's able to actually function very well.
All right, so we can find that out.
There's a lot of things that can actually be done, and if you're getting drugs that are just knocking you out, then then that needs to be looked at. And so the durable power of attorney can say, they don't really wanna be completely knocked out, this is not good. And it generally is not good anyway.
How do we convey that to the health practitioners in regards to that? And my experience is that the nursing staff, pretty much gave a sedative to my father, that he was not even awake 90% of the time. And then based on that, he couldn't really eat. So then the physician said, well, let's put a feeding tube. As a result, because he's not eating, and I didn't think about it at that point in time, to say, well, if you take, and I talked to the nursing staff and physicians to change the scheduling of the sleeping pill so he's awake during the daytime when the food is around. But they were not cooperative. That's one situation. Another situation was when my brother-in-law, his wish was to resuscitate. And his wife's wish was do not resuscitate. The physician came in and asked a question. They're supposed to be impartial in the wishes of the patient. And asked, what would you like? My brother-in-law said, I want to be resuscitated. And the physician says, why? You being so much da-da-da. And he pretty much badgered my brother-in-law to be do not resuscitate in conjunction with the wife. How do you work with the healthcare professionals in that situation? Because that's, and the thing is, legally, yes, but you still can't convince them, no matter what. I couldn't convince the physicians and the nurse to adjust his sleeping medication. And the result of it, post-surgery, 2 days, he died from the feeding tube surgery. When I clearly said to the physician, risks and benefit. The risk outweighed the benefit, the physician said. And it came as to what I thought it would be. How do we deal with that? Given we have this, we are the agent of that person, or the agent of me, dealing with healthcare.
It's a good question.
I have a little bit of help phrase with that. As the agent, you have the authority to refuse any treatment by any doctor.
Yes, and the doctor threatened, if they don't take it, you're out of here.
You request another doctor, they have to supply another doctor.
Yeah. But
I've had many of those situations. I've stopped in the middle of an injection.
Yeah.
Said stop. They have to stop.
They-
They're legally bound.
they-
Otherwise, you can sue the pants off them.
Well, this was in Canada, so they're not too happy.
Oh, yeah,
But well, it's very HMO-ish. But it's sort of, but the thing is, they are in rotation. So if they even pinpoint one physician, and even I spoke to some of the physicians, they said, we don't know any of these patients at all, unless they're screaming bloody murder. If they're not, we're not gonna look at them. So they don't even care.
That becomes your responsibility to scream bloody murder.
I know, but I'm just kind of getting from your point of view on the other side, and not to say if anything, but how do we work with these healthcare professionals?
We have to train them to respond to us, and we're the front line.
We
We're
are,
gonna
but
be
they
the
don't.
advisors. They're going to go in and say, I'm advocating for this person.
I know.
And I have their life in my hand, just as you do, Doctor.
Yep.
And I'm gonna say what she can't say, stop that treatment, don't give that feeding tube, and I'll have another consultation with the next doctor in rotation.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yes, it is, and that's what the route I took, but they were just so adamant and to fight, what's the word? Bureaucracy is very difficult. And I was just wondering from your point of view, how can we work with these healthcare professionals so that we don't annoy them and treat them poorly, the patients, when we're not there, and then comply with them and try to reason with them
I
and say.
think that you can be skillful as much as you can, but when you hit a brick wall, then, like he said, you have to say, well then, you know, you have to consider the priorities that we want for this, for my father. And if you're not able to do that, then I take you off the case. And, but okay, well, you're in Canada, and I don't know how their process is there. But in this country, that you can take somebody off the case.
Well,
And say that you want somebody else.
The physicians are not assigned a case, they're rotations. So they're only there for 1 week, they're off, so these are not their personal patients. So in that situation, I don't know what it's like here in the US for HMO. I don't go HMO, so I don't know. But
Well,
I'm just wondering if that's
If you
the
go into the
situation.
hospital, the trend is that you end up seeing a hospital, basically, hospitals have hired these hospitalists, they're internists. And so the internists are the ones that take care of you. But you certainly can rotate, if you don't like a particular internist, you can ask to speak to somebody else and to have somebody else take over your care.
So there, one
It doesn't matter
internist
whether
is
you have an
assigned-
HMO or PPO or whatever it is. That's just the way the hospital is.
So they're assigned a case and they stay with it, and then from there you move up.
There are teams,
Got it, thank you.
and within that team, there are different doctors that work at, their schedule.
Right, but my brother-in-law was here in the US, and his wish was resuscitate me. His wife was no, and the physician said, in agreement with the wife, why would you? And I saw the physician actually badger him.
Well, that's not
That was-
acceptable, because if the
No.
patient is able to speak for themselves, they understand their condition, then that the durable power of attorney does, or even the wife or the spouse, if he doesn't have one, would not override him.
Yeah, it was just so sad to see that. And he's a pharmacist, so he's more aware of what the general thing is. And it was just so hard to see how that physician was disregarding the wish of the patient.
And that was here in this country?
It was at UCSF.
Uh-huh. You know, I just wanna say there is some recourse in many hospitals now. There are medical ethics, bioethics, teams.
Yep.
And you can go to those.
Yes, sir.
You can
Yeah.
call an ethics
Exactly.
consultation.
Totally
Exactly,
understandable. No, just so my other brother-in-law is a physician.
Right.
So I know where it's coming from, what it's all about. And they're supposed to be ethically and morally, the physician is supposed to be in compliance with the patient and their patient's wish. But it was just sad to see that particular physician
Yeah.
was not supportive
Right.
to that one patient, and that's what's sad to see.
But you know,
And I couldn't say
I'm afraid you
anything.
can't do very much
No,
with
I'm
people
just-
who have bad behavior.
Exactly.
But you
right.
can't, you can't.
But you can't do anything, no, excuse me, you can't do anything about them with their bad
Yeah.
behavior. People wanna respond in that way. But you do have options to be able to find somebody who can treat him.
It's really important when you see something going wrong to stop it, right? And I've stopped shots, giving people shots that would have killed them. And I, doctor, do you even look at this form? No, they need this now. Look at the form, look at their cheek. Oh, that would have killed them. They told me that.
Oh,
It's
no.
like, hello, what's your job? I'm doing your job here, telling you not to give that shot? Oh, yeah, I'll give this other shot. Oh, no, that'll give a high, oh, this gives,
Yeah,
but we have to be the ones that's at front line, because then the ethics kick in.
yeah.
And hopefully there's some nurses who'll help you, because the nurses know too, they go, oh yeah, he's always pushy, or he's.
Yeah, and there is always these patient advocates that work in risk management
Yes.
that are available to talk. You can always, march over to risk management or ask to speak to someone from risk management. There's always somebody else that you can talk to.
Yeah, but I
You
totally
can talk to a
understand.
supervisor. When I was a supervisor, we would handle that kind of stuff.
I totally understand there's legal intervention, but there is the one that we're talking, where I'm more of a non-legal thing when you're dealing with people.
That sounds pretty
sympathy,
legal,
that's so
though.
hard.
Basically, they're going against the wishes of the patient and the family.
And I think another point is to empower ourselves and to really look at our own issues that we have with authority, that we have with the medical system, whatever we've been through or we haven't been through, and come to terms with our own stuff so we can go into a situation as a clear advocate and know our ground that we stand on.
Right. Right. Well, I think that was the advantage to hearing what Otto Gowande has been teaching and experiencing for himself is that whole trend of involving the patient and the family and their priorities and what's important for them. And it helps us to think about that as well too for us.
No problem.
Love the green man.
Sorry.
Right, and so what life support treatment means, each situation is going to be a little bit different. And this friend of mine, he went to the physician, and there were palliative treatments that could be done, that actually were surgical interventions or radiation that could stop bleeding, that could, you know, help other symptoms, that are life supportive treatments. It's palliative. And so there's a difference between something that's has the goal of being palliative as opposed to more reversing the disease process, or reversing the outcome in a major way that's life supportive in a different way, like when they talk about dialysis and blood transfusions and major surgery. They can really be a lot more heavier intervention that can maybe be more curative, or extending someone's life. So if you're someone is close to death, then there are decisions about, I want to have life support treatment, I don't want life support treatment. And so that decision of what life support treatment actually means at that particular time would need to be defined a lot more clearly. Just like Otto Gawande had mentioned, that you need to have that conversation not just once but a number of different times, because the situation changes and the priorities change. And what it actually means for life supportive treatment would change. Yes?
We talked earlier about this point, I wanted to bring it up.
Sure.
That this particular document, this 5 wishes, there's a conundrum in it for lawyers and hospitals. Because we've just seen on wishes 2, we sign away and say, I do not want anything done or omitted by my doctors or nurses with the intention of taking my life. Right there, you sign that, there's not even a checkbox. Over here, it says, I do not want life support treatments. The hospital has to pick one that says they will support life, unless you line it up.
Right.
So this particular document sets it up, that the hospital has to resuscitate you or be life supported, unless you line it up. That's an important thing to look at in any of the documents.
Specifically, which phrase and what page are you talking about?
Excuse me?
Are you talking about what's in this book?
Yes.
Yeah. Which page and what?
Page 6.
Page 6.
Wishes 2. You sign in a thing under what you should keep in mind as my caregiver. On the right-hand side, top one says, I do not want anything done or omitted by my doctors or nurses with the intention of taking my life.
But you see, what the way I take that is that these are things for you to keep in mind. And then it goes into the check off list. But that's
Right.
how I take it.
But this one has first choice. Anything that'll save my life. This is a right for life advocate who wrote this form, so he's not giving you the right to have, if you're terminal and you have life support put on you and they're keeping you alive by, a pump machine, you don't have the right to disconnect that, because you've given them the right in this other paragraph to keep you alive at any means. So you need to line that one out.
I get it. This one is sort of like, give me a life forever, and the one is the other wish is, keep me and let me die peacefully.
Give me a good day.
Yeah, I got it.
Give me a good day.
Yeah, just let me
So you
go.
have to be very active watching these, because whoever writes them usually has something in mind. And this particular one is excellent. However, there is that particular kind of pro-life at any cost.
Pat, I have a question about the
Sure.
do not resuscitate. I thought in the state of California you had to have a separate form, state form that's do not resuscitate, and it's not included in the advanced directives. And at the bottom of the pages it says, page 6, many states require a person to have a do not resuscitate form filled out and signed by a doctor. And then it says let's ambulance and you can wear a bracelet and the whole thing, but my understanding is that the usual advanced directive, like even at Kaiser, does not include your wishes do not resuscitate. You have to do a separate form. Is that correct?
There's the, this is expressing your wishes for what you want, and this is what you're asking the Durham Power of Attorney for Healthcare to advocate for you. But in actually coming up with the order of do not resuscitate, does need to be written as a medical order and supported with the reasons why somebody would, not only they would want it, but also that their condition warrants it. So I don't know if that answers you, so this.
There's a form for that, right?
Yes, there is, but it would be, either the doctor would write it as in an order, or you have a pulse.
Pat, can I address that too?
Sure.
As a first responder and paramedic, we're legally bound to do CPR.
Yes.
If you're 80 years old and I know I'm gonna break all your ribs by giving it to you, I'm still legally bound to break all your ribs to try to make you live 10 minutes longer in minutes pain.
And if the person is wearing a bracelet?
If your bracelet on, I look at you and go, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying.
You gotta have the bracelet on or a necklace piece that says, do not resuscitate.
Or having that pulsed on the refrigerator.
And then.
Well, it's being called on site. You're looking at the person first, you're taking their vitals, you're doing all that. Somebody's gonna jump in and start CPR.
Oh, I didn't know
And if
that.
we're not doing chest compressions, which is pretty much what we do now, there's somebody who's running down to find the fridge or liquid paper. Often it's in the freezer. There used to be vials. You put it in a vial in the freezer.
Or a fridge.
In case a fire came through. So you knew it'd be safe in the freezer if there was, smoke problem.
I've heard of that.
So meanwhile, you just crush the chest and they come back, oh, I think I got the form.
DNR.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen this, Pat. Particularly older people or people who have arthritis or a calcium, loss of calcium, women have loss of calcium.
His bones just break.
It just cracks. It's not even.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
That's very important to us, I believe. My mother-in-law, currently 89, living with us, she has a pacemaker and she disabled it to the extent that when she passed out, when she really, her heart stops, it won't bump again, to bring her back again. So in that particular case, I don't think she has anything like this, do not perform CPR on me. So if we call 911, would you still be obligated to keep
No,
her?
you'll tell her that you'll tell her, she has a pacemaker. We already have that information. They'll call up whoever the doctor is and say, hey, can you remote start your pacemaker? Because nowadays, they can kick start them.
The doctor has already disabled that.
Yeah.
We told her,
It's
the
disabled.
doctor, right.
Okay, we'll just be informed that it's there.
Okay,
and in place.
okay.
And usually, when somebody has a pacemaker, there's no,
No, okay.
it's like, we don't have enough force to keep it going.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We probably need to move along because we only have 40 minutes left of our program today. There's an actual puja and soak happening at 7 this evening. The 49th day puja for Lama Yeshe Nima, who was associated with ODD. So we need to be able to clean up and leave before that ceremony starts. Thank you.
Other questions?
Explain the beginning too, because for me, sound like such a slow and painful death of suffering to starve.
No, it's actually not. It just swallow the tube, basically. They swallow a very thin tube that is able
Oh,
to
I
give
mean
people.
too, but if I say I don't want that measure, that life-saving, life support treatment, To me, that just sounds like a horrible way to die. It's starvation.
Well, I think that you have to look at it within the context of everything that's happening. I have a friend who had surgery last August that didn't work out very well. And she basically, for 5 months, she has been on a feeding tube. And she goes on hikes, she's, very much participates in her care, but she ended up with fistulas. So just to say in an isolated way, I don't want to have feeding tube when you don't know the entire story. It's different if maybe you've had a very severe stroke and then you want someone wants a feeding tube that basically is going to keep you alive when you're in a vegetative state. It's a different circumstance. It's a total different scenario.
How many days does it take to die from not having a feeding tube?
Well, if you don't have water, then it's just really not very long. It's a few days. The longer if it's food. But that it's still within the context of exactly your whole condition and the priorities that it makes sense within that. I mean, I would never suggest that this friend of mine not go on a feeding tube. She would have died, when she didn't need to die. This fistula is going to heal at some point. It's been a very long time, but at some point it's going to heal and she's going to be better.
I think one way to think of it is, will this feeding tube help me recover my life, or is it just going to keep me going in a vegetative state? So it's like the subtlety in the, it's not feeding tube
You
or
have to
no
look at
feeding
the whole
tube.
situation. You can't just take that one thing. Makes you, it's uncomfortable thinking about it.
Excuse me, but then how do you write that out? I mean, how do you, if it's a subtlety, then how do you express that?
Well, this is what makes it really challenging and about filling out these forms, is that what you really want is you want your durable power of attorney to be talking to the doctor in terms of what your priorities are. And hopefully, if it's you, if it's us, we can participate in that. But if you're not able to, then you make the decision that you think is best. And so it's going to change, sometimes from day to day.
Exactly.
Sometimes in a matter of a few days, the priorities are going to change because the situation changes. So what this does with the 5 wishes, and we're getting onto the next page, if you go to page 8, you start talking about, my wish for how comfortable I want to be. How much is it a concern? I mean, mostly it is for most of us. We want to be comfortable so we can meditate, we can practice, we can enjoy our family. And then your wish for how you want people to treat you. And that can be, here, this, I would never write it quite the way that this guy wrote this. But this is an opportunity to talk about, maybe having someone reading the Dharma to you, or chanting or singing songs, songs of realization, Milarepa songs, anything that would help to support you in your process. I have an aunt that filled this out, and she wanted certain songs, and she wanted people to be there and to be singing, and she wanted things that were something that the family did anyway. She wanted to feel that kind of a support. So you might want to cross out the things that don't matter to you, and then add things that would matter to you. And then when you look at wish 5 on page 9, it's my wish for what I would want my loved ones to know. This is a perfect opportunity to be writing letters to family, talking to them about what's important to you, for the kind of death you would want to have, or the kind of support you would want to have with it. In Buddhism, we really provide a tremendous amount of support in our practice and our meditation to help people through dying in a way that a lot of religions are not quite there. So,
How flexible is it in the hospital environment to have this, where you have your family and friends to be there chanting for you, etc.? Because the hospital setting depends, of course, on the situation. If you're in ICU, if you're in a private room, if you're in a shared room,
Right.
how much leeway does the hospital give for that?
Well, if you're in like a shared care situation where you know the person is dying, and at least at Marin General, they give you a private room. A lot of the new hospitals now, they're all like built as private rooms. And they're very much allow people to be there 24/7 to the extent that they want, with some concern for their getting the rest that they need. And so there is a lot of allowance for that. You know,
So in
then
ICU,
you can just even have a tape, you know, a little MP3 player of,
So it all depends on what's going on overall, like if the person's in ICU and they're kinda on and off, but they do want that you know it. Hospital environments kind of limit that, right?
it can be limiting. If they're in the ICU, that's certainly true, but you could have an MP3 player that's playing.
Right, okay, thank you.
You know, playing, chants or the bardos, the Book of the Dead. I think that there's always opportunities for that. I know that we were pretty flexible in general. Even if people wanted to do a vigil for a number of hours, we would even find a room where we could even bring the body, have the family together. So, one of the things that is you doing spiritual will, and that's something I think that you've mentioned in your book, talking about a spiritual will. Have you done that, Julie? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that would be the other thing to go along with this, and also letters, as I've mentioned, to family. And one thing that was very beautiful about this man with AIDS that died is that he really asked people that had problems with each other to solve their problems, and really talked about his life and you know, what was important to him. And I mean, it was really very beautiful. He was an advanced soul, he really was. And it was very powerful, because it really helped people to feel a sense of closure around not having him there. So I often think about this as a very important part of the end of life decisions, is writing letters to family. I think most of us have some family members who probably they would read the letter rather than talking.
Pat?
Yes.
What we've done too sometimes is record the person.
That's a
because they
good
can't
thing
write.
too. That's a very good thing as well.
Tell a story or tell.
Right.
And then you hear that voice again.
You're right, and telling stories and family stories. And one woman that died in the ICU was amazing, and it was, she had been told for years she had this end-stage emphysema and COPD, and she was told that she will never be able to go on a ventilator again, or she'll never get off of it. And so this is hard, you know. She's awake, she's alert, she's active, she's involved with her family. She has difficulty breathing, it's true, but you know, she had a bout of pneumonia again, and they said, well, we can give it a try, and she says, well, but if it's not gonna work, then I wanna be taken off the ventilator. And with that understanding, they put her on the ventilator, and they couldn't get her off the ventilator. So this is a woman who was very awake, very alert, very much participating in her care. And she decided to have the ventilator removed. And she did it with her family. So they had this whole family get together, and they showed family movies, and they told stories, and they had food, and they just had this party. And they all left the room, except for the daughter. And then, you know, they gave her medication so she could, you know, just be more somnolent, and took the tube out. So that's, you know, there are all kinds of possibilities that can happen.
What's a spiritual will?
Well, what you would like to have happen, and from a Buddhist perspective, you know, what kind of prayers that you want to have. Do you want to have poa? what do you want to have Sangha members coming and maybe meditating and practicing with you? There's one woman at a Sangha in Sebastopol, and it's Goldridge Sangha. And this woman was dying, and we each took turns to go and sit with her and to practice. And when my turn came, she was the one that was teaching me, which was pretty amazing. It was really interesting. Here I was going there to support her, and it was really good. It was actually very sweet. I remember it very well.
Forgive me if I have this incorrect, but we're supposed to have 3 days after death or at the time of the death, and we have 3 days. Is that correct? In a way?
That's the traditional thing, is up to 3 days.
Right. How do we do that in a hospital environment?
Well, you wouldn't be able to.
Okay.
You know,
We cannot request and say, can we just leave it there for a few hours or anything at all?
Right.
Okay. So there's no leeway for that part. Thank you.
Well, you have to work with the hospital on that. I mean, obviously, if they're extremely busy, you know, then it's harder.
It's a business.
I understand, but I was just like, kind of like asking, because you've been on that side of the fence,
Yeah.
that you may have a little bit more of an understanding of how much of a leeway, if we ask, and as a courtesy, would they consider, or it's not even, don't even ask, they're not gonna even happen, the type of thing. But I was just kind of
You know what?
curious.
You go in there with the idea you're gonna make it happen, and you talk to them. And that's the best way to do it, because if you have a preconceived idea about what they will do or not do,
Right.
you may not be right.
Right.
I mean, when I was a supervisor or in general, if you got me, then I'd work with you.
That's what I was gonna
If you
say.
had somebody else, they wouldn't work with you as well.
How much of an opportunity would that happen to me? No, totally, it's a case by case situation, but I was just kind of curious, being in the field, how flexible are you given to do that opportunity? So to speak?
Generally speaking, they want to meet people's needs.
Right, yeah.
And every single year, well, throughout, I mean, when you get discharged from a hospital, they will send you a survey. And they use those surveys to really look at how they can improve their patient care and, you know, the customer service, so to speak. And so having that, you know, having those options is important, not for many people, that's the thing, so.
You don't always have the option, but when you do have the option, you don't wanna die in a hospital because of that.
Yeah,
You
actually.
wanna die at home.
You do. Yes,
If you're on
obviously,
hospice
yeah.
care, you wanna be home.
Yes.
If there's any way that you can be transported home before your death, you wanna do that because of that. Because a hospital is not gonna, I would say rarely, I've never seen it, give you a room for 3 days after
No.
you die.
No.
We just know that going
Right.
into it, so you try to make those arrangements ahead of time.
Right, you need to notify someone if there wasn't at home.
Yes, you have to call,
Well, if you're on hospice, then you would notify hospice.
the other hospice.
And,
Then notify in San Francisco, the city coroner.
Yes.
Yes.
But they'll allow you to leave the body.
If you have, the documentation that says you wanna do that, and you have it set up at the mortuary. A few years ago, we had this, and we had to have dry ice and a bag to keep the body at a certain temperature.
Oh,
We do that for 3 days.
In this area, you use the Neptune Society. What is the Neptune Society?
But you set that up beforehand.
a lot of the mortuaries will do that now.
Yeah, I thought you said that the mortuary will bring the body home
Yeah, they must.
and then pick the body up again.
Right.
And I know Jerry Grace Lyons, she
Yeah.
does all this
Right.
with the family,
That's true.
including transport.
Right.
Yeah. She has a van.
Yes, hi, Fran.
I just wanted to say, because we looked into this, and there's a little bit of everything in here, but, if you want to take the body from the hospital home, then, as they said, it can be done. It's a lot of work, and there's, a group that will help you set up the dry ice and all that at home. I don't know if Neptune does anything but transport, but it's Jerry Grace Lyons, and they're a resource in here, and they will, because there's a lot of things about not having the body deteriorate. But on the other side, when we call and talk to mortuaries, most of them say that they don't really get around to cremating the body right away anyway. And in here, in this resource guide, are listed the ones that will let you come to the mortuary and chant, and also be there again and chant during the actual cremation. But, you know, you can't chant 24/7 in the mortuary, but you could do it like each day until they finally cremate. So the more flexible mortuaries, you have some options there also.
They will charge a fee for that, so
Yeah.
set that money aside.
Yeah.
Exactly, but those are options.
They will, but it makes,
Yes,
it's
we had-
doable.
Oh, yeah.
It's doable.
Yeah, many years ago, we had a Sangha member that passed away, and we went to Mount Tam in San Rafael.
Yeah.
And right at the where they cremate, and it's basically a garage. But they set up, they're very good there, they're very nice, and they set up tables and chairs, and there must have been 30, 40 people there, because he was not only with Suka City, but he was also one of the Diamond teachers, Diamond Heart teachers. And so there were Diamond Heart people there as well too. And, you know, and they did their particular ceremony and their talks and stuff, and then Suka City did some chanting, and, because it's what he wanted, he was very clear about what he wanted. And some eulogies, and then his body was put into the crematorium, and they turned it on. So it can be done, you can do things in a number of different ways. Yes? Who goes next?
As just a quick general question, does anybody know if anybody has something set up in that way, where a service for the Buddhist community to have a place where they can transport the body? Is that what is right there? Your answer is going to be? Who's answer?
Are you gonna say something? Oh, me? Well, I was gonna say something else, but I can refer to that. I did go up to, Fernwood has a cemetery and cremation spot in Marin, and they will allow you to do whatever you'd like.
For 3 days?
Yeah, but the point is that you mentioned, if you do it at the mortuary, you have to pay by the hour. You have to pay by the hour. So what I found out, which people have said, which I never knew, was that, and I asked the mortuary there, they will pick up the body at a hospital and bring it to a home. And then pick it up from the home and bring it to the mortuary. So you have that intervening option.
I think I mentioned that.
Well, I was more kind of asking, is there like a separate, currently set up a separate service where the person isn't going to the home, but actually a place that they have set up a special room?
Yes,
so
they'll take you wherever your body, any place.
No, it doesn't
No,
exist.
you're talking about a specific place for Buddhists, but I think that there's enough different sanghas and everything that I think that,
because if they
there isn't
have-
a general kind
There
of.
will, I mean, John Pfeiffer, who's part of this group but couldn't come today, is trying to start the Buddhist home with the support of Pema Olselang and other Dharma teachers. And that's exactly what they want to create, and he needs help, actually. So I've asked him if he'll come in and talk about that for one of our future programs, and maybe we can rally together and help that situation come to fruition. But there is that in fact, I got contacted by somebody in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, who's trying to do the same thing there.
Because
So
it's
it's not unheard of.
Right.
Because they would be able to have the equipment set up to not have ice packs, etc.
Right.
And places where the family can do 24/7
Right.
type of practices. So I was just kind of curious how
They did that at Gold Ridge Sangha many years ago.
Oh,
Suka City doesn't have that capability to do that, not every place does.
So that's a good thing to start at.
And I had a little bit different question. I would really like to see if I can be a Buddhist and have a natural burial. And when I was speaking with you, Julie's talked about wanting to have ashes or something. And I'm wondering, can you like cut hair or use other body parts for ritual purposes and not burn the body? Does anybody know an answer to that?
Well, you don't have to have
What?
a cremation.
You don't have to have cremation at all.
It's just that
Go
if
to
you wanted to
Fernwood.
put, ashes in satsas, you would need to have a cremation. But it's not a requirement.
You could put hair or something else.
I would imagine, I've not heard of it, but I
Yeah.
don't see why not.
I don't see why not either. Yes, what, did you wanna add something?
One last thing I think is really important, on this last page 11, there's a format of a card to fill out that you can use yourself.
Right.
We've made this card in town, as nurse practitioner, and we changed it a little bit, because it's, in case of emergency, if you're dying in a car accident or something, it says, next of kin to notify and things like that, your doctor. We put down, notify my teacher, Kimbo so-and-so, here's his phone number.
Yeah.
That's the first thing to do.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking of having.
Bob died, oh, thank you, we'll start now, So it doesn't matter then if, it's already set, because you're already on the line of
Yeah.
being cared for by your community and your teachers.
So I have a question related to that. Say, we're alone and we're killed in a motorcycle accident or something like that. Are they gonna go home and check our refrigerator?
No.
Oh, no, they check the wallet.
You just
You
get
know,
all
cash.
I have a question on that. My mother died, or had a serious stroke driving down the freeway, and she had her pulsed in the glove compartment, and they never looked.
Wow.
And they hooked her up, and it was terrible, and then she was on life support for a month because her husband insisted, even though she was almost a vegetable, and went blind and so on, and then we had to unplug her. So, I carry my pulse in my purse. It doesn't mean anyone's ever gonna see it, and I think that bracelet thing is a really good idea, because it shows on your body what you wanna have done.
Yeah.
But I went into my physician and I tried to have my pulse done in such a way that I wouldn't be resuscitated under certain conditions, and the way a pulse is written, it doesn't allow for those subtleties at all. It's like either yes or no. And then I took it to my doctor and she refused to sign it. And both my husband and I have pulse filled out, and neither of our doctors read them or documented them. They just signed their signature, which you said is not legal. That's a Kaiser doctor and a East Bay doctor. To have the doctor not go over it with you and then
You're supposed to do
document
that.
it in your chart.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, they're supposed to do that.
Yeah, so it's all, nothing is cut and dry. You have to be really your own advocate or have an advocate with you.
Maybe they should start getting into microchipping, so that they can have scanners and have it on post.
You're scaring me.
So the question is, I heard
Excuse me, excuse
me,
me, someone's speaking.
It's a question about autopsy, and maybe someone can address this. I heard recently that in the state of California, if somebody who has died has not seen a physician within the last 6 months, an employer can automatically go ahead and do an autopsy, or will do an autopsy. And so the way to circumvent that is to write on your final directive that due to religious reasons, you do not want to have an autopsy. Obviously, the criminal investigation is a different.
That may or may not hold water. It depends on, it's up to the coroner. And my experience with the coroners is that they will contact all of the physicians, even if it's been over 6 months that you've seen someone, in order to see if there's any physician that thinks that you have passed away as a result of a condition that they've treated and that they're aware of. And because a physician has to sign the death certificate. And if not, and they will do everything to avoid an autopsy. The coroner will do a lot to try to avoid having to do an autopsy. It's extra work for them.
Yeah.
So,
I have another question too. After dying, the idea of not touching the body for as long a period as you can, as opposed to bathing the body right after death. I worked in a Buddhist hospice that we bathe the body right after death, and then there's the thought that you leave the body, don't touch the body if possible for at least up to 3 hours. If somebody could comment on
I can comment on that.
that. Okay.
Well, Lusiltra Malioni instructs her students to bathe the body immediately. My teacher not immediately, to wait 3 days, as I understand it, is that right? My teacher, Galcha Rinpoche, said you do it immediately. Now, you don't want to disturb the body, that's for sure, and you don't, like, if you have a lama doing poa, Galcha Rinpoche said, don't touch the body other than we cut the clothes off with scissors. Gently take them off, very lovingly wash the body, and leave it alone. And then when the poa happens, if the lama's doing it, you're not to touch or interfere in any way. You don't even touch the top of the head, because the lama does that. You know, you can actually distract the consciousness if there's a realized teacher assisting. You don't want to interfere in any way, but he did say that you wash the body immediately, which I've done every time I've been with someone when they die. It's not to, there's also the idea that if someone's going to be doing poa and the consciousness is going to go right away, then after that happens, sure, wash the body.
Right.
But do you want to wash a 3-day-old corpse? I don't. Not that it's humorous, but, I mean, you have to follow your teacher's guidance. That's the point.
Yeah, that's true.
What's the significance of washing?
And
It's
actually,
it's a tradition.
that, lots of times these teachings come up and it's within the context of some particular situation. And we take it out of the context and we want to make everything so concrete. It's not always so concrete.
Probably whoever is there to do the poa will be the one who advise.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what would be your advice or everyone's here sitting here suggestion? Let's say in the case someone alone or died in an accident, but the will was embedded in a compartment or in the wallet, never got looked at. But what would be the best? I want my master to be notified the first. Something, like necklace or something like bracelet, something band to be written. How could I, the first time, so masters could start in the prayer or some rituals guide me on the path? What would be the best
I have
suggestion?
never seen a bracelet that says to call my lama. I've never seen it.
What would I like to
Have you?
Yes,
You can you can just wear a medical ID bracelet, open it up, and it says, call my lama, here's his phone number. I have a card in my wallet.
Or you have it in your wallet, and that's one of the first things you do is you look at the wallet and see who is this person.
Well,
Or at least you look for the law.
And you're looking
And
for,
people now look on cell phones.
cell
don't
phones,
they?
right? Cell
And then
phones,
there's a
cell phones.
particular, it's ICE, in case of emergency.
Oh,
And
ICE, okay.
ICE, isn't that right?
Yeah, just put the first number on your cell phone, because when you go through the cell phone, you look for the first number, and it says, call this, and you hit that number.
Yeah.
Or emergency, you hit that number.
Emergency.
Right.
And you know, bro, that's the one.
Well, my iPhone is password, it's not.
What about medical alert? Like people wear medical alert.
Yeah, I think
Like,
that's
in case
great.
of emergency, they check the medical alert, right? And the information, doesn't it get fed into the, whatever the
Yeah,
call
that's a
center?
service that you actually purchase.
Right.
And so the medical alert goes to these service operators who
Right.
then, talk to you and then dispatch, request for dispatch.
Right, so could, at that point, at the medical alert, could we put that information there?
I don't really know. I think that you'd have to speak with them about, what their protocol is. And, if it's not actually there on their computer screen when they get the phone call, then
Right.
I know.
It's so wonderful to have you here, and it's flown by.
I know. Well, thank you. It's been really wonderful. It's, Was it helpful hearing these stories about Otto Gawande?
Oh, yeah.
I think it starts to make you feel a little bit more empowered, I think, to express your own, think about your own priorities. The priorities for your loved ones, if you're advocating for them.
Thank you very much. Everyone, thanks so much for coming. It feels so good to be with everybody together in this place and studying and practicing this arena of our spiritual path. So I'm very grateful, and please come back, and we'll have our next event on July 26th.
Thank you.
And do you need some help putting chairs away and stuff?
Yeah, that would be great.
Stay?
I have two little, you brought the text in, right?
Yeah.
So we need to talk about that.
Okay, so let me help clear.
Absolutely. Yes, but at 7 I need to be there. Okay, so I just wanted, but I'm there too.
So I know.
So is that what you want to do, is be the one that you want to be one of the people? I'm so glad you were so glad. You need us to but then,
Together in this. I'm so glad you guys just email me and then I'll email you and you guys can go. No, he's in,
He's in the news all the time. It's not discovered. That's another story. Yeah. I'm sure you have. It's heartbreaking first when you just know it's been different.
Well, I'm hoping that's why so I'm organizing.
Hey, Jules. Do the chairs need to be set up ready for the right?
chairs missing and
Oh, really? Volunteers, take chairs into the shrine.
She denied there were any fears. Oh, and she was going to be should.
I mean, it's
We actually dug out the basement, made a strange room in there. It's about the best I can say for it.
I know somebody who died like that. Did she ever have any regrets? Did she ever